Here in the Kingsbury works of Vanden Plas, the bodies were made for the Bentleys that won the classic Le Mans race 5 times, and that was 40 years ago. We've come down here to Kingsbury to see the Vanden Plas treatment being given to another British Leyland car. This time, it's the Austin Allegro. Now, just like the V12 and the big Daimler limousines that you see outside the very best hotels and embassies around the world, so too this model has the wall-to-wall carpet, the polished wood and the leather interior. But there is a difference. This is Savile Row quality at an off-the-peg price. The cars arrive here as shells with everything in place except the interior trim, which is probably just as well, because if they did try and build the whole car here at Kingsbury, it would certainly work out a sight more expensive than that £2,000 plus price tag that it already has. Then the whole thing is given very rigorous checking. Here, for instance, they're checking the doors to make sure that the doors really do fit. Coming along nicely. In fact, the whole car is checked over enormously thoroughly. More thoroughly, in fact, than the ordinary Allegros that come down the production lines at Birmingham. Of course, British Leyland could do it to all the Allegros, but if they did, looking at the amount of time it takes and costing that time, your ordinary Allegro would cost you a lot of money as well. But quality, you see, is important for the chap who wants to buy a car that is just a little bit special. Even if he's paying just a little over the £2,000 mark for one of these and not the £7,000 or so for a magnificent Daimler V12. Then again, if you're going to make a car that looks like the inside of a London club, it's got to sound like the inside of a London club. It's got to be quiet. And Vanden Plas damp out the noises you have to put up with in an ordinary Allegro with copious amounts of this stuff. The roof's lined with stiff board and a nylon headlining. The sound damping's put under the bonnet, there's a carpet in the boot, and all that sound-deadening felt ends up under the wall-to-wall carpeting. In fact, they've tried to get the same effect in the small car as they do with the Daimlers, which have been coach-built here in much the same way since the 1920s. This is Albert Schofield making seats for Vanden Plas and Daimler cars. The hides come from Connolly's. Each one has to be examined carefully and cut to avoid the scratches cows get when they brush against a barbed wire fence or even get an insect bite. Choosing hides and seat trimming is a craft that goes back way before cars were even invented, to the days when coach building was literally building coaches. And craftsmen like these chaps here have been making seats for the well-off to sit on for a very long time. Well, let's go and find out just what it is about the 1500 that Vanden Plas hope will turn on the customers for this, the very latest in their long line of status symbols. Well, the first thing you'd most certainly notice if you've ever driven an ordinary production Allegro is that the Vanden Plas 1500 is really quiet inside. Not that the Allegro is any noisier to travel in than any other mass-produced machine, but this one is just very much quieter. Both mechanical and road noise have certainly been most effectively damped by the Kingsbury treatment. I suppose the most different thing about the car from the outside is the grille, very definitely from the same family as their Daimler 66. The pair of auxiliary lights from Wipac have been neatly integrated into the front apron too. Otherwise, there are merely the fairly inevitable badges here and there, and the traditional hand-painted coach line down the sides. As for the engine, straight Allegro, but rather surprisingly only the 1500 version, not the 1750, which to carry all the extra luxury paraphernalia would perhaps have been slightly more appropriate. Still good enough for 60 miles an hour in about 17 seconds, 85 or so flat out, and an average of 24 or so to the gallon. On the transmission front, there's a choice between the useful Allegro 5-speed manual gearbox or the brand new Automotive Products 4-speed automatic unit. But it is in the inside that you really notice the difference. For a start off, the wooden dashboard, for instance, really is wood. None of your plastic. This is genuine burr walnut. Instruments nicely recessed in there, and they've even got walnut cappings on the top of the doors. Headlining, brushed nylon. Good quality stuff, shades of the Daimler 66. And the steering wheel, not the controversial quartic steering wheel that you get on ordinary Allegros, you know, the square-shaped wheel that's designed to give you easy access and good vision through to the instruments there. No, I must say, rather thankfully, we're back to a conventional round steering wheel for this particular model. But a black mark for this, the automatic gearbox stick shift down there. It is actually quite difficult to reach when you've got a seat belt on, and I do think they could have spent a little more time positioning that for the convenience of the driver. The seats really are first class. Leather covered, nothing like the smell of leather, is there? And really very, very comfortable indeed. And yet, for all that, despite the carpeting and the woodwork and the seats, it is still an Allegro. And one gets the feeling that those leather seats are going to be alive and kicking long after the standard steel Allegro body has been pensioned off. Nevertheless, if it follows in the steps of its predecessors, the Princess 1100 and 1300, we can expect a long and loyal waiting list for this model from the sort of people who are prepared to pay a little bit more to get a little bit more.